Hey, welcome to not Chad's Beer Reviews, but an archive edition of Chad's Beer Podcast. If you've been watching me since the early days, 2008, you remember from like 2010 to 2012, I would do this thing where I would like interview other beer tubers. Usually, like what we would do is we would review a beer via Skype. Yes, we actually used Skype back then. And then I would interview them. It was a podcast format. I just didn't call it a podcast. It wasn't like on any podcatchers. It was only on this channel, or actually my other channel, I should say. And this is back when like a 10-minute YouTube video was considered really long. And even though like I was partner at the time, I would still split them up into like 10-minute segments just because I thought people would get bored after 10 minutes. And like now it's the other way around. People want to watch like 3-hour long podcasts. By the way, this is also available as an audio podcast, so if you don't want to watch it, you can download it and listen to it. Subscribe to the RSS feed. It'll be on every major podcatcher and all that stuff. So anyway, this is actually 2 episodes in one. So this is 2 interviews with my friend Jay, better known as Jay's Beer Reviews. Him and I actually went to high school together. And then, I was in the Navy for a few years. And then after I got out, I moved back to, the area where I grew up. And it just so happened that me and Jay, even though we hadn't really seen each other in like a decade, we both were huge craft beer nerds. And Jay was like years ahead of where I was at the time. So the first interview is from around 2010. And then the second interview is in 2012. And I'm not going to do 2 separate episodes because altogether it's fairly short. So, enjoy this archive review, and thanks for subscribing and share the show with a friend. Hey, welcome to the first episode of Interview with a Beer Critic, which is something that I want to start doing from now on. The only problem is a lot of the beer critics I know live far away, except for JJ Rudy 41, who lives down the road from me. I just wanted to kind of see who you are as like a beer critic and like your history and like where you come from and things like that. How would you describe like your history with beer? Like, when was like the first time you ever had one?
The first time I had an alcoholic beverage was at a wedding when I was about 12 years old. But it was champagne. The first time I drank alcohol was about 15 years old, but that was more of just kind of rebelling, I guess you would say.
Right.
First time I had beer was about 18, 19 years old.
Right. Now, if you didn't know, Jay and I went to the same high school together, and we hung out a lot in the years before I joined the Navy. And I remember going like a lot of house parties with you, and you always like sucked down Coors Light.
Yeah. Coors Light was my go-to beer for a long time.
It was for me too. Now, when did you was there a specific beer that was like, or did you ever reach a moment where you're like, I'm getting sick of these fizzy yellow beers, I want something better, or did you just happen to drink something better and be like, I want to do that from now on?
Well, I actually remember the moment that I changed over. I wouldn't say changed over to craft beer, but the moment that opened my eyes to something other than just Bud Light, Molson, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
I was actually at a restaurant with a good friend by the name of Drew, Andy Novak.
Right.
And we were at the Outback, and he was asking them what beer they had on tap, and they had Michelob Amber Bock.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, that's good beer. He's like, and I asked for my traditional Coors, and he's like, "You should try this beer." And I'm like, "I don't want that. I don't want anything." He's like, "No, just give it a try." So when he got his, I tried it. It was like nothing I've ever tasted in my life. So I was like, "Wow, that actually was pretty good." And from that point on, I started drinking Michelob Amber Bock, and then that led me to.
How old were you then?
That's probably around like 23, 24.
Right.
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
So about 10 years ago.
Yeah, so that led me to wanting to try more beer. And actually I went to Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, and I did like a whole beer school. there, and I'm sure anybody who's ever been to Busch Gardens knows exactly what that is. And you get to try all the different Anheuser-Busch products that they had at the time. At the time, Michelob Ultra was not even out; they were testing it, and I was one of the first people who got to test the Michelob Ultra. That and Budweiser Select. So I was drinking those. Yeah, Budweiser Select and Michelob Ultra were not even on the market, and they were testing out. And I was like, oh, these are pretty good too. And that one thing led to another, and then one day somebody said, hey, one thing led to another, and then I started drinking more and even different beers like Guinness and stuff like that. And someone asked me if I ever been to M.I.A's in Albany, and I said no, and then they said, well, it's a beer bar, you would probably love it, they have all different craft beer. And I'm like, okay. Now up to this point, I've had maybe 80 different beers, but it was all like domestic beer. I've never had like a true craft beer yet. And I went to M.I.A's and had my first ever true craft beer, which was Young's Double Chocolate Stout. And that was it. That opened the floodgates.
No
to
more
everything.
fancy yellow beer.
Yeah, so Michelob Amber Bock was probably what got me to try different things, but the first time I had a craft beer was Young's Double Chocolate Stout, and then that opened the floodgates.
Now, how long was it between the Amber Bock and the Young's?
The Young's Double Chocolate Stout, I was probably about 27, and I was probably about 23, 24 at the Michelob Amber Bock. So it's probably like a 3-year period between just trying different beers to my first craft beer.
When did you start keeping track of how many different beers or styles that you have had?
Actually, what happened was once I went to M.I.A's, my now wife, we went back there like 2 or 3 times, and this was before I even signed up for they have a brew tour there, and they keep track of how many beers you had. Before I even signed up for that, I would come home and write down each beer I had so I can remember it. And then at that point, I literally listed every beer I ever had. And at that point, it was like 110. And I was like, that was easy to remember. And that was within the first 3 months of my really keeping track of beers. But 80 of those 110 beers were all domesticated beers of some sort.
Macros.
Yeah, macros of some sort.
Yeah.
So, but I only had like 20 craft beer at that point. So, at that point, I started keeping track, and I actually still have the spreadsheet of all the beers I ever had of the first 110, and then I just lost track because it just kept building, and then I'd go out and I have a beer and I would forget to put it on.
How many do you think you're up to now?
I would say over 400.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, once I started doing the YouTube videos, I was at like 300 at that point, and I'm at like my 103rd video. So I would say I'm at around 400 or more.
What's your favorite style of beer or brewery or something like that?
My favorite style is probably stouts. I like stouts the most. My palate changes as I get older, and I start to find myself liking even stronger stouts than when I started. So I would.
The one we just drank.
Yeah, like the one I just drank. So I would say stouts is probably my go-to favorite, but I also get in different moods at different times. Like I'll grab, even though IPA is not my favorite, I'll grab an IPA if I'm in the mood for one, especially if it's a hot summer day. But I would say my go-to is stouts. They're the ones I find the most enjoyable, and I think they're even the ones I tend to review the most as well. As far as favorite brewery, at one point it was Young's Brewery from England. Everything they made, I loved, but then they sold the company and they stopped making like half their beer, so now they only have like 2. So I can't say honestly they're my favorite anymore. Now my favorites are probably, if I had to pin it down to be 3. I really like Rogue, Dogfish Head, and Southern Tier. And Southern Tier is a New York brewery, so it's kind of like I call it the secret gem of New York.
So now, like, what's like your actual thought process of like when you're grading a beer? Like on Beer Advocate and Rate Beer, when you actually grade the beer, they have like different categories of taste, aroma, drinkability, all that stuff. Like, how much emphasis do you place on those specifics?
The one I put the most emphasis on is taste. Taste has got to be the most, but I do account for all of those factors. It needs to look good. It needs to look appealing to me. You can have the greatest tasting beer in the world, but if it doesn't look the greatest, I might not either try it or not even give it the highest ranking I can, simply because it doesn't it doesn't appeal to me in a visual way as much as other ones would.
Right.
But it's going to hurt it so minimally if it doesn't look as appealing. Taste is the most. But yeah, I take into accountability. I take into the way it looks, the way it smells, whether it's easy on the palate, if it's drinker friendly, and then of course taste is the number one attribute that I look into.
Now, I noticed in a lot of your videos is that you mention ratebeer.com a lot and not so much Beer Advocate. Now, is that just a personal preference, or why do you like Rate Beer more than Beer Advocate?
I like Rate Beer better than Beer Advocate because I can go to Rate Beer, punch in the name of the beer, and it pops up and it gives me any bit of description or reviews of other people that I want. Beer Advocate, you have to be a member, you can't get access to a lot of that stuff. You can't just go in and I am a member to Rate Beer, but Beer Advocate, to try to find something or find information about it, if you're not a member, you either may not find it at all, or you're going to find very little information. What you can do is go around the system. If you go to Google search and put in the beer, a lot of times you'll find that beer on Rate Beer or on Beer Advocate, and then you click it and you'll find it easier that way.
Yeah.
So there is a way around it, but if you just go to Beer Advocate, and there's no real way to just search a beer on Beer Advocate, where Rate Beer you can do that.
Right.
The other thing I like about Rate Beer is Rate Beer has they have categories of what they consider the greatest beers in the world currently. They have the greatest retired beers. They have the greatest beer. You can go by beer by style, and it will list like what they consider.
Beer does that too.
Does it?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I didn't know you could even do that, but I can do. I just think I can do a lot more at Rate Beer, so that's why I like them better.
Like when it comes to beer, and you kind of had this recently with the Trappish Rochefort, and like me with the Chimay Blue is like. Do you actually grade it on how, like in a more existential kind of quality, like how good it actually is, or how much you actually liked it, or a combination of both?
Well, I try to rank a beer based on what I thought of it.
Right.
I don't care what anybody else thought of it. This is what I thought of it. But, that being said, I also try to be open enough to say, just because it's not my style of beer, can I get out of it what other people may like?
Right.
Like, you're an IPA guy and I'm a stout guy.
Right.
I don't really like a lot of IPAs. If an IPA has a lot of citrus and pine attributes to it, I tend to like them better. And if they have florally attributes, I tend to not like them as much. So I'll try to go into a beer, and if I drink an IPA that's more on the floral side, it's probably going to get a less of a grade just simply because I don't like that quality beer. But I also try to weigh in the fact that there are people out there who like that quality in a beer, and if it's delivering that, and if I could tell that it doesn't taste like, it's hard to describe this, but it doesn't taste cheap to me. You know, it tastes like it's doing what it's supposed to, like the Rochefort. I can tell you that a Belgian style beer is just not my style, but I could tell that beer was made with quality because it delivered in every aspect that it could. So still was a good beer, but I'm not going to give it the highest rank because the bottom line is it didn't blow me away. And it's not my style, but I've had beers that aren't my style, and I go, wow, I would drink this again. Mm-hmm. So I try to base it on what I grade in a beer, but I do try to respect what the qualities are supposed to deliver as well.
Right. And then on the opposite side, is there any beers that, like a guilty pleasure, like a beer that you know is like, this really isn't that good, but like I'll drink it, or like I like it but I won't tell anybody, you know?
No, but what I will say is there is a macro beer that any given day that I'll drink, and that's Miller Lite. If I'm out camping and I don't want to spend a ton of money, just recently I was on vacation for my wedding, and they didn't have quality beer on there, so I was forced to drink like the American domestic beers, and I'll drink a Miller Lite because I think the reason why I'll do that is because of all those domestic beers, that one tends to be the less gross tasting or least likely to give me a headache.
Right.
You know, so I won't say it's a guilty pleasure, but there's beer out there that's not the greatest. That
Stuff you can tolerate.
Stuff I can tolerate in a given pinch. Like if I go to somebody's house and all they had in their fridge was Budweiser or Heineken, there's a chance I'll pass. But if I go to someone's house and they got a Miller Lite, I'll drink it. I don't care. So I wouldn't say it's a guilty pleasure, but there's still cheap beer out there that I will still drink.
Now, what do you like, why are you on YouTube reviewing beers? Like, what's your end game? Do you actually hope to actually accomplish anything? It's like, a lot of people would say, I mean, like, if you go to Mahar's or, like, just people on rate beers, like, they're going to punch up, like, a one-paragraph so-called review, and, like, that's good enough for them. But it's like, to actually be on YouTube and put yourself out there and to feel the need to videotape almost every beer that you drink and to review it, it's like, is there something that you hope to accomplish, or it's just like, like, you ever ask yourself, like,
I already know the answer.
Yeah.
I already know the answer. Actually, I had no interest in doing the YouTube videos at first. Actually, you were the one, I think you took 6 months to convince me to finally do one.
Yeah.
What I found when I finally did do one with you is the interesting aspect that I found the most appealing out of the whole beer review thing was I loved editing and making a 10-minute movie.
Yeah.
That's what I loved. And the beer review is more a second part of what that's the
You just happen to
reason.
be making.
That's the reason for me to make 10-minute movies.
Right.
And I mean, I can make a 10-minute movie on anything. I can make it on how to throw a softball. But the reason why I think I did the beer review is, well, because you kind of were like directing me to, like, hey, you should try this. But I think I know quite a bit about beer for my age, and I think I think I can offer real information, and I also think I can make something entertaining. So it's like it's something that I happen to have some knowledge on, not the most, but not the worst. And I know I can be entertaining. I know I'm creative with my ideas, and one of the big things about me with my YouTube videos is, more than probably any other beer reviewers out there, location is like my kind of thing. I always try to mix up locations, you know? So if you see anybody else's beer reviews out there, I don't think anybody does as many odd locations as I do.
Yeah, I try to.
Yeah, well, I mean,
with snow.
everybody has their things.
Yeah.
There's definitely, I get ideas from other people. I see people do things. I'm like, that's a good idea. I can do this, but I can do it better because I'll take the next step.
Yeah.
So the beer review is kind of like the second part of what I'm doing. I actually just really like making a 10-minute video and making something creative. The beer is just the result of what I've made, and I chose beer because I think I know quite a bit about it.
And that brings me to, like, the final question is like, what do you think, like, anybody who's a critic of anything, they have to be able to, first of all, articulate a point, but they also have to sell the viewer or the reader or whoever that they're knowledgeable and that their opinion is worthy, you know? Like, what do you think, like, how, like, when somebody comes up to you and says, who are you to be rating beer, it's like, how can you answer that,
I can answer that because I know what is in a beer to give it its quality. Everybody has their own individual taste that they're going to like. But I know what to look for in a beer that gives it its quality. Whether you agree or disagree with me, or whether you like the type of beer I do or not, I know what a good quality beer is. And I just learned it from just drinking different beers and learning what I find in a beer that is good and not. I think the other part is I don't really care what other people may think as far as if they don't like my thoughts or not, because there's going to be people out there who do like say, you know what, this guy knows what he's talking about, and I'm going to listen to what he has to say because he tends to be right. And there's going to be people out there that say, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because I don't know as much as Michael Jackson,
Right.
but I know more
The beer
than
critic.
but I know more than the 18-year-old who's drinking Bud Light.
Yeah.
So I don't need to justify myself by saying I know what a good beer is. I think I have pretty good knowledge on a beer, and here's my advice, and you're going to either take it or not.
Right.
I don't think you can go to my beer reviews and say you have no idea what you're talking about, because I think I at least have some sort of idea.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not going to be for everybody. I also brew my own beer.
Right.
And I'm not very good. Okay, let's just be honest. But I've made some that I said, oh, you know what? This one didn't come out too bad. And there's other ones where I taste it, I go, I did something wrong in the process because it came off sour.
Right.
You know? So I knew the beer was bad. It's no different than a lambic or whatever I may be having. I can drink a beer and say, this ain't right. You know what I mean? Like, it may not be my style, it may be my style, or whatever. I can drink a beer and say, something ain't right about this beer. Something is not made with the type of quality it should be.
Right.
You know, and that's how I know. Like, that's why it doesn't matter if I had 100 lambics or 2.
Right.
I could still drink the beer and say, you know what, I don't like these sweet, fruity beers, but I can tell the quality's there. That's how I grade it.
Well, I guess that about does it because we're going on a while here. So thanks to Jay for doing the interview.
Sure.
And be sure to check out his YouTube channel. Well, that's your personal webpage is jaysbeerreviews.webs.com.
Yeah.
Also youtube.com/jjrudy41. And I guess that about does it. So thanks again, Jay.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see you guys in the next interview. Bye. Hey, welcome to another episode of Interview with a Craft Beer Enthusiast. It's been about 2 years, but catching up with Jay of Jay's Beer Reviews, better known as JJRudy41. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been 2 years since our last interview. Mostly what's most interesting is what would you say you have learned in the last 2 you're coming up on 3 years on YouTube, right?
Just over 3 years. February was 3 years.
Like, what would you say you've learned in the last 3 years as far as like your own palate development, working with, you know, viewers and things like that, and, you know, interacting with breweries and stuff? I mean, like, it's a really open-ended question, so feel free to answer as
what I've learned as far as my palate is it's ever changing. I go from 1 month liking one type of beer to another month liking another type of beer, and then once I get on a pathway of a beer that I like, I'll kind of stick to that style for a little while, and then I'll get sick of it and change over. So I think what I've learned as far as palate goes is it's ever changing. Right now, the style that I seem to be into right now is probably IPAs, but I'm starting to make a trend towards farmhouse ales.
Oh yeah.
So I've had a couple and I've really liked it, and now I'm like, now I want to try every farmhouse ale.
Yeah. Saison.
Yeah. So, you know, as far as that goes, I would say that would be a good answer as far as that. The other part I think is the more beer I have, the more arbitrary it becomes over what I think as far as where I grade the beer, because so many of them are so similar.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think to myself, God, did I like this one better than that one? For the moment I did because I have it, but then I'm like, it's almost like I wish I had them side by side to see if, which one I really would like. And I give it a grade, but then I'm like, I'm not even sure that grade is, you know, good enough. And the third part about it is I actually just had this discussion last week while I was at the Ruck, is, you know, maybe some beer that I at one point didn't like or did like one way or the other, maybe now I would like or wouldn't like because of my change. And it's like sometimes I think I want to go back to some of these beers that I like ranked really high or really low and see if I still feel the same way.
Yeah.
Because of my development.
What holds up and what doesn't.
And then, you know, the gentleman said to me at the Ruck, he goes, well, why don't you do that? And I said, well, I think because there's so many beers out there that I still want to try. It's like, I don't have time to go back to ones I've already done.
Yeah.
So, not that I don't drink them on my personal life, just on camera.
Right. What have you learned, like, as far as being a beertube sensation of, you know, interacting with people on the internet and stuff like that?
I think, I don't know, learn is a good way to say it.
What's your experience been, I guess?
I think when I first went into this, I was like, no one's going to care. And then, you know, little by little, I gained some notoriety, and then I've even gone places where they're like, you're Jay from Jay's Beer Reviews. I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, but...
Right.
And I recognize that I'm really just a teardrop in the ocean. I'm really nobody.
Right.
But it's still kind of cool to get recognition some places. I mean, there's brewers that know me. I mean, part of the reason I've gotten to where I am is through my YouTube, and now that's even led to like opportunities with breweries and bars to share with them my experience, and where now I've gone to meetings and sat with like millionaires and just discussing, you know, beer, you know. So I'm always going to be appreciative to every fan I have out there, whether they like me, hate me, or whatever, just watching my stuff and, say, I like what you do or I hate what you do. I appreciate every single one of them.
Yeah, I noticed that you tend to respond to almost every comment you get, usually in a pretty polite manner, even if they hate, like the Sam Adams Vixen or whatever, where your opinion was deviated from the norm. So everybody said you got it wrong or whatever, but you were still pretty polite to the people in the comment section.
Yeah, I've had a few moments where I was like, whatever, you're an idiot. But for the most part, I've tried to be polite in my comments simply because at the end of the day, whether you hate me, you're taking time out of your day to watch me. And I appreciate that at the end of the day, no matter what.
Right. And to kind of tag up on that and what we were talking about off camera, when we talk about, like if you ask me, like, and you say, like, what are you grading on? I'm saying, like, I'm basically grading on how much I like the beer. We kind of talked about this 2 years ago. Like, what would you say, like, when you're grading, because obviously you're grading to your own personal preference and taste, and you're not afraid to call bullshit on things.
Well, okay. I was trained on how to properly drink a beer in a non-professional way.
Right.
I was taught about the pour, the smell,
Right.
the visual, and then the taste.
Right.
So I was kind of taught. So I looked for all those in my beers, no matter what. I still kind of use that guideline to help me guide me through what I think of a beer. Does it look good? Does it smell good? All those type of, and is it true to what they're trying? Is the beer true to what it is they're saying it is? And then at the end of the day, you take all that, which is all, that's objective manner,
right.
And then I still mix that with my personal taste. At the end of the day, it can have all those great things, but if I think the beer tasted like crap, it still tastes like crap.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that. I'm not afraid to say that, where I think there are many people who do. The other part about it, too, is I'm not a professional. I don't pretend to be, and I never will be. And I see some people out there where they smell the beer, and they're sitting there describing 14 different things that they smell. Well, I call bullshit on that. Because I'll tell you, when I smell a beer, I might get 2 or 3 different things.
Right.
But for the most part, I mean,
Unless it's like a Trappist quad or something.
I'm like, and then there's some people, they give a description of what they're smelling, and I'm like, would you look that up and then just, please, be real. Tell me what you smell. It's okay that you only smell 2 or 3 things.
I think, I don't know what the general public's reputation or perception of you is, but like mine kind of is like you're the no holds barred, no bullshit review. What was it, like Blue Point put a link on their site, like unbelievably real,
unconventionally real.
Yeah. Is that how you perceive yourself? Just like have you ever held back? Oh, I really didn't like this, but I don't want to maybe like one of the homebrews or something, or are you just completely honest and blunt all the time? What you see is what you
get. I'm unconventionally real, but at the same time, I will spare feelings at times. And, actually, this goes back with
you didn't really like my homebrew that much.
No, yours I actually did, but like the Vixen was a perfect example. There's a gentleman, I think Patrick Boyle was his name. He says, you're saying all these negative things, but would you say that if the brewer was right there in front of you? Right. And I said, no, and here's why.
But who would, really?
Well, think about it realistically. Yeah, I want to be real, but I'm not a jerk either.
Yeah.
All right? And if you're a brewer, and you're coming on my show, which is nothing, you're going to take the time out of your dedicated life to come on my show, I'm not going to trash you in front of you.
Yeah.
I might be, I'll try to find a polite way of saying I'm not a huge fan, and I don't know how I would do that.
Right.
Because I still want to be real to my viewers. But I'm not going to trash you. However, when I'm doing a beer review for the sake of the beer review, I'm not attaching that beer to any one person.
Right.
So at the time, I can be real. Now, sometimes I've run into brewers afterwards. And they're like, "Oh, I saw your review of my beer, and you thought it sucked." I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of did," and then I feel a little bad, But I'm still, my viewers like me for what I do, and I'm gonna stay true to that.
Yeah. Better Beer Authority just did their top 20 informal poll, and you ranked number 14. We were talking about that off camera a while ago. And you, what was your basically what was your reaction to seeing that?
Two parts. First off, loved it. Loved it because number one, for people who don't know about me, they get an opportunity to maybe learn about me.
Yeah.
The other part about it was I didn't ask this gentleman to do this. He just did this on his own for his own fun, and to see people out there responding because they just feel like it and ranking me as the top 14 out of, I think they said 48 different beer reviewers got votes.
Right.
That's cool to me. The other part of it though is, well, I had no idea this was going on. I didn't tell my viewers who watch me to, hey, vote for me. So if anybody did, it's because they just did it on the kindness of their own heart. And then the other thing is, I don't know of my viewers how many of them are watching his show to even know to have voted for that themselves. So it is a loosely based top 20 on what he did. So, I'm not going to sit there and say, well, I am only the 14th best, because while I may be the 14th best on that poll, I may be the 10th best on someone else's, or I could be the 20th best on someone else's. Right. So I was very appreciative, and I thought it was a really cool idea, and I loved it. But I also realized that it also means nothing, really.
Right. You got to take you to task on something. I think, well, one of your trademarks is your straight down the center Randy Mosher pour method, which we didn't talk about 2 years ago. One, who taught you about that pour method? Two, what has been the reaction from viewers on that method? And three, defend that pour method.
Okay. For starters, that is probably the most controversial thing on my show as far as negative comments or comments indifferent to the normal, hey Jay, I agree with you, or that was a great review.
Right.
Most people, hands down, that is the biggest complaint. Oh, your pour method sucked or whatever. Yeah. And the first answer to that is, well, none of them ever tell me what knowledge base they have on their pour bases, or where they've learned it, or how they know that their method is the right way and mine is the wrong.
Because you were pouring that way before I even read Randy Mosher's book. Correct.
I learned that from a class that I took. It was put together by Budweiser, and it was a simple.
Like at SeaWorld or something?
No. I've done those things too, but this was a different thing I did right at the brewery. Oh. I went to their brewery years ago.
In St. Louis?
No, not that one. It was a different one. I want to say maybe it was Virginia, the Virginia one.
Oh, okay.
And they had a class. It was like a 3-hour session, kind of like Beer 101 type thing. Yeah. And you went in there, and they basically told you everything about beer and how to do it. So yeah, it's Budweiser, and they taught about a pour method, and they talked about this pour method, and they poured down the center, and they explained why that was the proper way. And I kind of looked at that and liked it. Then once I became kind of more involved in beer, I started reading books about beer. I mean, I got 2 or 3 of them sitting right down there.
How to pour beer in
that's Michael Jackson's book. So I've done some reading and also taking this class, and there was multiple different ways of pouring, and ultimately I came across the Randy Mosher pour method, and he basically said, you pour down the middle no matter how long it takes, and you're fine no matter what style. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? For everybody that has all these different ways, including Michael Jackson, his was like, it don't matter. Pour down the middle, no matter how long it takes. Yeah. And that's what I learned in this Beer 101 school. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to identify that, and I'm going to adapt to that. Yeah. That way, it's the same. It's consistent. There's a consistent method, and that's why I use it.
I think the alternative to that would be that it's a one-size-fits-all, kind of method or approach, which is, it's all black and white, right or wrong instead of shades of gray. Viewers, feel free to comment on that in the description box. So,
well, I get that people are going to have different opinions. That's fine, but that doesn't mean that their opinion's right and mine's wrong, or vice versa.
Right.
There's no definitive answer that says this is the right way to pour beer, with the exception of if a brewer says, please pour my beer this way.
Like on Duvel, it actually says that. Since you've been doing Jay's beer reviews, you've done a lot of trades, you've got a lot of donations and stuff. Have you gotten to try you got to try Westy 12 and things like that. What's been the kind of white whale or the brass ring that you've gotten to try so far, and what's still on your bucket list?
On my bucket list, we'll answer that first. There's a beer out of, I think, Switzerland called the Norms Porter. I don't even know how to say it. It's some Swedish name, and it's a retired beer now, so I probably will never get a chance to try it. But it's an imperial stout. Imperial stouts are one of my favorite styles, so I'd love to try what's considered the best imperial stout in the world. I'd love to try the Pliny the Younger. I'd love to try the Surly Darkness. So those are like my bucket list wants. As far as my brass rings of what I've gotten to try, the Bourbon County Rare, that was definitely really cool to be able to get to try that one. The Sam Adams Utopias. I mean, you know, for what it is, I mean, I got to try something that it cost over $100 a bottle, so it's not something you're every day going to get to try. Definitely the Cigar City Hunapao Stout. That was a brass ring. Westy 12, obviously. And I could probably even throw in like the Founders CBS and KBS. I mean, there's probably more, but those are probably my brass rings as far as beers I've got to try that I was really happy to get.
Yeah, and are you like me where it's like once you've had, because I've had most of those beers too, I'm just like, you know, once you get Founders, KBS, like what else is there else to get?
Well, everything else becomes arbitrary.
Yeah.
Because you've had the best. So the only good thing about beer today is there's so many craft brewers out there now, and every day there's something new. Like I thought, I've gone through and said, how many of the top 50 have I had? I've had like 30 of the top 50 according to Rate Beer or Beer Advocate.
Right.
And now there's 20 new beers made this year that are now on that top 50 list. So.
Yeah. But most of these big deal, high-ranking beers are big imperial IPAs and stouts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak for you, but I mean, like, I'm much more impressed when I have like a 5%, like Surly Bender. I think it's like 4 or 5%. Really robust, really complex beer that's small. Are you more impressed by those kinds of beers where it's small but it's still tasty? Or do you just, like, everything has to be KBS, Pliny type category?
No. It tends to be, the beers I drink the most are your 6-7%ers.
Right.
They're the beer you're going to find in my fridge. And they're the beer that I'm usually most pleasantly surprised by because they're not known as the best beers in the world. And I get them, I'm like, this is really good. And, and you can drink it, and you're not drunk, and you're not, you know, you can have more than one.
Yeah.
So I am impressed by that, and I like that. But at the same time, it seems to be some of those big ones, not all of them. You don't have to be a big beer to be a good beer. But some of the best beers in the world just happen to also be big.
Yeah.
You know, so.
You haven't homebrewed in a while. Are you gonna get into that again?
At some point. The last one was so bad.
Is that the raspberry wheat?
No, I made one after that was worse. And I recognize that my apartment that I live in right now is not the best setting to make a home brew. So I kind of like took all my gear and put it in my storage unit and said, let me come back to this when I got a house of my own that I can really cellar and really make a good batch of beer. So I didn't retire, but I've gone on hiatus for a little while.
Yeah.
I am thinking about bringing it out for a homebrew competition that's happening down at my favorite beverage or my favorite bar, The Rock. But
yeah, I'm thinking about it too. So
I just suck at it. So
yeah, that's something I should ask you on the first interview. What does JJ Rudy 41 stand for?
My name, my nickname, and my number that I played for semi-professional football.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks to Jay of Jay's Beer Reviews. Go check him out. Put the links below. And thanks for doing this interview.
Sure.
All right. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Somebody brewed it. Chad just reviewed it. Thanks for watching Chad's Beer Reviews. Trust me, the next episode will be a lot better.